Hey, it's Jeff. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be lightly pruning and watering my 5-year-old jade plant. This thing is getting to be an absolute beast. If you've never propagated a jade plant before, I'm going to kind of run through the process of how to do it, what to expect. Same with watering. If you don't know how to water a jade plant, I'm going to explain all that in detail. Hopefully it's just going to be another informative video on jade plants. So let's get started. If you are new to the channel, I took this cutting from the mother plant, which happens to be right back there, almost exactly 5 years ago, just as a single stem. I'll try and insert some pictures of what it looked like when I took the cutting. And I didn't start pruning it until it was probably maybe 1.5 years old, maybe 2 years old. It started to branch out naturally. And over the last few years, I've been pruning it to manipulate it into more of a tree-like structure. And I think it has an absolutely beautiful structure right now. And it's got a nice, thick, beefy stem. To achieve a thick, mature stem like this, you need to prune the plant, and obviously it takes time. So right now, overall, I'm happy with the structure of the plant. There isn't one particular branch that is hanging off the side more than the other branches. And if you rotate it, there is just a nice canopy. Generally, when you prune a jade plant, it's for a couple reasons, and I think one of the most popular ones is to get it to branch out. So if you make a cut, typically you'll get a branch, or 2 branches I should say, from one of the closest nodes, and I'll show that here in a second. Another is to propagate it, which I'm not really doing that for today. I want this plant to continue to have that nice tree canopy, and what I plan on doing is every year just snipping off basically the tips of all the branches so that it will branch out and continue on with that dense canopy. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to run through all these branches here shortly to show you the process, but like I said, the structure is really nice. I think it has gorgeous branching internally here as well. Everything looks nice. It looks full, luscious, and as you rotate it, you can see the structure of the stem from this side quite nicely as well. This spring, some of these leaves have come out a little bit deformed and damaged. Now, typically, I would be very suspicious of bugs and pests, but it's on a few stems. Let's see if I can, where are they? Like right here. I don't know if that's the same one I just shown. Up here as well, there's some damaged leaves, and they're all basically from either 1 node or 2 nodes down. So I've looked this plant over from top to bottom, and normally you'd be suspicious of mealybugs. You can see there's just some deformed leaves, but I honestly think this is probably my fault from really underwatering this plant in the last month or so. So when it was starting to push out all this new growth, it wasn't receiving enough, whoops, I got a little dust in my hand. It wasn't receiving enough water and nutrients, I think. So I'm going to try and rejuvenate it with some light pruning. I'm going to water it and give it some fertilizer. I'm just going to quickly explain the concept with pruning in order to get it to branch out. So right here you can see there's 2 leaves. This is a leaf node or leaf line, and you can see right here there are 2 branches that are I guess sprouting out from that node. I previously made a cut probably last year, and it's branched out in this area. If you notice, and I've explained it in other videos, whenever, this is the way you can manipulate a jade in how to grow. You can see where it branched out from this node, there are 2 leaves. So they always have 2 leaves per node. So you can see right here, it's got 2 leaves, and then it's got 2 leaves on the other direction. Whenever you make a cut, so I would have cut just above this node, the branches will be on the same side of the leaves just below it. So you can see there's 2 leaves and there's 2 branches. So if I was to find another section like right here, I'm going to use this area as an example. If I was to cut right here in between these 2 nodes, the branches would form from the same sides as the leaves just below it. So that's how you can manipulate the tree to grow in a certain way and develop that thick canopy. If I cut right here, right up here, it'll branch out in this way. So if you want something, or if you want branches to fill in this area, then you can make that cut. Now, if I wanted the branches to come out a little bit further this way, I'd go 1 node above it to this one, and I would cut just above that so that the branches come out this way instead of this way, if that makes sense. I'm going to start with this branch right here, and I'm only going to be taking maybe like 1 or 2 nodes off of each stem. And you can see there are 2 leaves right here. I'm not going to make the cut above those leaves, because if I do, it's going to branch out in this area and this area, and eventually over time the branch that comes out on this side is going to weigh this side heavily down, so it's not going to be upright anymore. So I'm going to go 1 node below that to the leaves that come out more on the side, so you'll get branching this way instead of one on the top and one on the bottom. So I'm going to come in, see if I can get that nice and close, and just cut above that one, just like that. So I'm left with a cut portion like that. The branches will form from this side, and I'll get a nice branch formation from this way instead of one kind of hanging down and pulling down on that side. So that's generally how I look at my branching, or when I make my prunes. I try and visualize how the branches are going to grow. So now that I made the cut on this one, up here you can see there is 2 leaves right there. So I might make the cut just slightly above that one, so that now the branches will form on this side, and it'll kind of fill in this area a little bit, I guess, fuller. If it becomes a problem, like if they're kind of overlapping, then I can cut one branch off, not a problem. Just going to kind of run with that concept as I go. So now for the next branch, you can see it started to branch out up here. I'm just going down the stem to see how far down it branched previously. So right here, there's a branch. Up here, there's a branch. I might actually leave this one because it's starting to form 2 branches naturally on its own right there. So I think I'm going to leave that one. It doesn't look odd. I'm just going to continue on. Now I'm going to go up to this one up here. See, there's 2 leaves on this side. I'm going to snip this one off like that, so that the branches will start to form this way, and it'll just thicken up that area. I don't know where that little cutting went. It dropped right there. So I'm going to set all these little cuttings aside, and I'll explain what to do with those after. And again, I'm just going to be snipping off the tops here, just kind of going around. I'm going to be doing this one just up here. Might be tough to see some of this, but I'm going to do it kind of quick here as well. One of my, I guess, rules for pruning is I will always prune off a branch that grows downwards. So if it starts to grow down or bend down like this, then that branch will get pruned off. I want everything to be growing upright like a tree. And if it starts to grow downwards, then it's getting chopped off. I'm not an expert with jade plant pruning. I'm not a bonsai expert or anything like that. This is just something I've learned on my own over the last few years, just watching how a jade plant responds to pruning and just how it grows. Okay, so up here, I'm just going to bring it in a little bit closer. I'm just going to pull these 2 little leaves off. So this is essentially what's called a pinching method, I guess. And I just pinch the top off up there. That will produce a branch as well. So this branch goes there. I'm going to cut this guy off right there, so it'll branch. These 2 should fill in that area. This one, I'm going to just pluck these little leaves off, just twist them. I've never really done the pinching method, so that's why I'm trying it right now, just to see how the plant responds to these little pinches. Up over here, see if I can get it in focus. Same thing, I'm just gonna, nothing fancy, just start cutting. This one I'm gonna cut these 2 leaves off as well. That's pruned, that's pinched. I'm going to go over it a couple times here before I finish with this project, but I wanted to bring your attention to this area up here. There is a branch that it's bending over because of one big, thick, chunky leaf. So I'm actually going to remove this leaf, and you just twist it off. You can cut it, but I just like to twist it off. you get like a leaf like that, and you can see this branch will now kind of correct itself, and it'll be able to grow straight instead of kind of flopped over just because of that leaf. So with that, I should talk about quickly, can you defoliate a jade plant? The answer is yes, and I do it all the time. I shouldn't say all the time. A couple reasons. One, for branch deformity like that. So if it's obstructing a branch from growing, I will just remove the leaf. I'm not going to remove much today, just because I want the plant to focus on the areas where I pruned and not, I guess, redirect energy to areas where I've taken leaves off for the plant to repair. So I want all the energy or all the focus of the new growth and energy of the plant to be in branching so that it gets this tree-like structure. Okay, so another reason why you'd want to defoliate is if you have certain branches that are like leaning or pulling over. So it's basically threatening the plant structurally for tipping over or snapping the branches. Now, what I typically do to defoliate is I will look for areas where they have very large leaves and they are at the areas where it branches or bifurcates, and I will just simply twist those leaves off. And as you go around and do those areas where the plant bifurcates, branches, just removing those leaves alone, set them in a pile, pick them up, hold them in your hand. It's actually quite surprising how much those leaves weigh and weigh down the plant. So if you take off just a few leaves off of each stem, it is a huge weight reduction for your jade plant. I think that helps strengthen the overall stem of the plant. Look at this thing. This thing's like the size of a small child's arm. It's getting really thick. I'm gonna show you this one right here. And this is kind of gonna segue into watering. This leaf right here, it is super wrinkled. It should not look like that. This leaf will eventually dry up and fall off, and you can see there are a few. And this is from me underwatering the plant, neglecting it. It should not be like this. Now, I should say as well, it is normal for the occasional like yellow leaf. It'll see if there's any on this plant right now. I thought I saw one. They will turn yellow. They're the lower leaves. They'll shrivel up, and the plant will, I guess, dispose of it. It'll just fall off naturally. No, I lost that wrinkled leaf. Where did it go? This one right here. So super wrinkly. I'm just going to remove that one. It's no longer any use to the plant. It'll probably fall off naturally in about a week or so, and there's a few others. So I'm just going to remove those. I probably shouldn't do that because of the reasons why I just explained. I want the plant to focus its energy on the growth. Okay, so now I'm actually going to talk about watering. Watering is kind of one of the trickiest things for jade plants, knowing when to water, and there's a number of different factors about the, I guess in regards to the type of soil you use, the pot you use, whether it's indoors, outdoors, the amount of sunlight it gets, etc., etc. So the way I tell if the plant needs to be watered or not is a couple things. Obviously, this is bone dry, and you can see it's actually separating from the edges. So this is super dry. It hasn't been watered in a long time. That's my fault. I've neglected it. I'm gonna have to give it a good thorough watering. So one, obviously check the soil. Mine is bone dry. I'm not gonna do it now because it's really heavy, but feel the weight of the pot. If it's light or if it feels light, it probably needs to be watered. But the number one, the easiest thing to tell whether a jade needs to be watered or not is by the leaves. You should not be able to fold or bend a jade leaf. They should be thick, they should be plump, and they should be firm. You should not be able to fold them. If they've gotten to the wrinkly stage, then you've gone way too far, you've underwatered. So mine is very close to being wrinkly without squeezing it. You can see how it shrivels up almost like a raisin. This is severely underwatered, it's dehydrated, it needs a good thorough watering. So that is the way to tell if a jade plant needs to be watered. And this can be applied to many other types of succulents out there. You should not be able to bend the leaves. And if you can, and the soil's dry, give it some water. Just gonna give some really brief, quick basic care. Jade plants, they typically need about 6 hours of sunlight, bright sun throughout the day. So if yours is like in lower light, just don't go throw it in like a south-facing window. You'll definitely get some leaf burn. slowly introduce it into higher light if it's not receiving enough light. One way to determine if it's not getting enough light, the areas between the leaves will basically get stretched out. So if your jade plant is looking kind of long and leggy, it's probably not getting enough light. Yeah, move it to somewhere in higher light and it should respond with some new growth. Now, if you take these jade plants outside, again, just don't throw it out in the full sun. Make sure you put it in like a completely shaded spot for maybe a week or so. They not only need to adjust to the bright light, but they also adjust to the outside conditions. So they love heat, not only sun, but they love heat. So if you just throw it in sunlight and the heat, it's absolutely going to roast them. They're going to get sunburned and it probably won't last very long. So put it in full shade. It'll adjust to the summer heat. Slowly move it to maybe something like early morning sunlight, direct sunlight, and yeah, it should do well. I wouldn't throw this in like direct sunlight, summer sunlight for the whole summer, but maybe something for a few hours in the morning. And yeah, I haven't put mine outside for a little while just because of bugs and pests. Don't really want to deal with it when I get them back inside, but you can change out the soil, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, need a lot of light. If it's not in bright light, put it in a brighter spot. Okay, so now for watering, I'm just using filter tap water. Honestly, it doesn't have to be anything specific. Jades they're pretty, they're not fussy plants. So I'm just gonna dump in a bunch of water here first. I'm using a cactus succulent soil. Usually it is pretty well draining, like you'll see it just soak through to the bottom. It might be a little bit compact, so it might take a while for that soil to, I guess, reabsorb all that moisture again, making it a quick draining soil. So it might not drain as fast as it normally would, and if it does, it's probably just running out the sides through the crack. So I'm gonna let it run through probably a couple times, just let it drain out through the drain hole, let that soak up. It's going not too bad. I'm going to give it a couple soakings and then I'm going to add some fertilizer in here as well. This is the brand that I use. It's just a cactus plant food. 7 drops into a liter of water. Actually, it's draining pretty well, surprisingly. And yeah, then I'll just water with the fertilizer. So I'm going to give it one more soaking and then I'm going to add some fertilizer. The reason why I'm watering first is because I'm not using like a ton of fertilizer in the water, and I'm not wasting it, I should say, but I want the soil to absorb some of that moisture before I add the fertilizer. It's really hard to overwater a jade plant if you have it in the right conditions. I like to use terracotta. It's very porous, it absorbs soil moisture lower in the pot and it evaporates it out. Make sure that you use a well-draining soil. Do not use a regular potting mix because that has like a lot of peat moss that retains moisture. Use a cactus and succulent mix which has, you can see some perlite, and also it has quite a bit of sand content in there. I'm not really able to feel it, but it just allows for that quick draining soil. Like you can see, it's actually draining pretty good. One of the misconceptions out there is that jade plants, they don't like a lot of water. And that's really not true because jade plants, they like to be thoroughly watered. I will soak the soil until it comes out the bottom of the drain hole, probably a couple times. Now, this is where soil is very important, or the type of soil is very important. Jade plants, they like to be watered thoroughly. They just don't like to sit in soggy soil. So make sure that you use the right or the appropriate soil and you shouldn't have a problem. I'll probably water this again in the summer in maybe like a week and a half kind of thing. And sometimes in the winter, as the plant doesn't need or utilize as much water because it's not growing, it usually goes dormant in the winter. I will probably water maybe once every 2-3 weeks and sometimes even up to a month. Depends on the plant, the soil, the pot, all that kind of stuff. Just pay attention to the leaves. If you can bend them, give it some water. Maybe not as much in the winter time as you would in the summer, but definitely it needs water in the winter as well. Okay, so just like I said, 7 drops. Just follow the dosing on the back of the container. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then where's my water? Try and do this with one hand without spilling. Not bad. Just fill it up to the top. And then I might give it a couple more soakings until it comes out the bottom. Having the right pot size for your plant is important too, because if you have a pot that is too large for the plant, it's not going to be able to utilize that soil moisture fast enough, and it's not going to evaporate fast enough, and that's where you lead or end up with root rot situations as well. With this size of a plant, this is probably an appropriate size pot. I wouldn't go anything larger than this. And if you see, or if you Google like Jade bonsai trees, they can actually grow in very small containers. They don't have a really large root system. They're typically a fairly shallow root system with very thin roots. So it's now starting to come out the drain hole there. I don't know why it's dusty, but I'm gonna give it some more water, and then I'll let that sit and drain through. And that's probably all the water I'm gonna give it. It was probably maybe a good 5 soakings. You can see it's coming out the bottom there. So I'm gonna let that drain through before I give it any more water. I'm gonna feel the weight of the pot, and then I'll set it back upstairs in my living room window. Let this plant repair itself, I guess, heal over, and hopefully in a few weeks, or in a week or so, we'll start to see some new branches pop out. See, now it's just flowing out the bottom. So that's why it's important to make sure you have a drain hole with jade plants. You don't want all that excess water sitting at the bottom, because guaranteed that will rot your plant and it won't survive for very long. Now I'll quickly talk about propagation. Every one of these cuttings can be propagated. Now for stem cuttings, you just cut the lower leaves off. You can let this callus over for a day or so, and then you can literally stick in soil. I don't let them callus over. Like, I could just stick it in the soil right now, just like that, and it will start to grow roots. It'll search out into the soil. You don't really have to water it all that much, because the plant, when it's rooting or when it is developing roots, it will actually draw moisture and nutrients off of the leaves itself. So you really don't even have to water a propagated jade for probably about the first 2 weeks, because it doesn't have any roots to draw that moisture up. So if you water it and you just, you'll basically rot the stems. So don't even water for the first 2 weeks or so, and it won't be a problem. Now, if you want to try leaf propagations, take a leaf like that, lay it in soil. That's what happened with these guys. I just laid a couple leaves on the bottom, and they eventually, like, the leaf will be like this. It'll be attached. It'll start to grow roots into the soil. It'll start to push out a stem. Eventually, the leaf will dry up and fall off. You can take it off. I like to leave it until it's basically really crispy. That way the plant gets all the nutrients it needs from that leaf. And here's one that is starting to branch out as well. So if you want, just toss it in the soil. You literally have to do nothing else. Once it starts to sprout roots from the end of the leaf, I will, if it's in a pot like this, I'll just water it like I normally would. Or if you have it in a separate container with a bunch of different propagated leaves, then all I do is just water or lightly mist the ends of the leaves once it starts to root. Otherwise, you don't have to do much with it. You can just literally plunk these in a container of soil, just lay it right on top, and it will start to produce its own new plant. Might take a while. I think these guys have probably been in here for about a year. Patience. Plants and patience are, they go hand in hand. Okay, so I'm gonna empty this saucer, and I'm gonna let the rest of the soil or the water drain out of the soil, and that should be it for this little project. Okay, I emptied that out, and honestly, I'm probably just going to give these away. I don't have room for any more jade plants. I have enough. So you can do plant trades, you can give them away, do whatever you want. So I think that's going to be pretty much it for this video. I hope you liked it. I hope it was informative for you and your jade. If you have any comments or questions, please leave it down below in the comment section. Thanks again for watching. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. Please like and subscribe. Appreciate the support. Take care, everyone. Bye.